There is a parasite currently living inside the brains of 2 billion people. It can only reproduce inside a cat, so it rewires everything standing between it and one. We will follow the scientist who first noticed it doing this to him and spent 15 years being dismissed. We will trace exactly what it does to dopamine, fear, and the neurons where memory lives. And we will ask why, despite 30 years of peer-reviewed evidence, no government has ever screened for it. You think the decisions you make every day belong to you. You think the things that frighten you and the things that don't are entirely yours. But there is a parasite that has spent 3 billion years learning to rewrite exactly that. It entered you through a litter box, a piece of undercooked meat or soil you once touched. It built permanent cysts inside the tissue that decides what you are afraid of. And it has been there so long, you cannot remember being different. Toxoplasma gondii is one of the most widespread parasites in the recorded history of biology. It infects nearly every warm-blooded species on Earth, but it can only reproduce sexually inside the intestine of a cat. Every other animal it infects is simply transportation. To reach the cat, the parasite does something that took biologists decades to believe. It reaches into the rodent's brain and dismantles one specific instinct: the fear of cats. An infected rat does not just tolerate cat urine, it is drawn to it. The parasite converts a prey animal's fear response into something resembling attraction. The cat catches and eats the rat. The parasite reaches the intestine it requires. It spreads back into the world through the cat's feces, onto vegetables, into water, into the hands of anyone who cleans that litter box, and from there into 2 billion human brains. Most of them will never know, because there are usually no symptoms. In 1994, a Czech parasitologist named Jaroslav Flair noticed something wrong with himself. He was crossing busy Prague streets without looking, ignoring oncoming traffic. He felt unusually calm in situations that should have frightened him. He was a parasitologist who studied behavior change in animals. He ran a toxoplasma blood test, and the result came back positive. He had been carrying the parasite in his brain for years without knowing. This is when Flegg began asking a question nobody in his field was asking. If the parasite had changed him, what was it doing to everyone else? He designed a large-scale personality study with infected and uninfected subjects. The results came back in 1996, and they were quietly extraordinary. Infected men showed measurably altered personality profiles compared to uninfected men. They scored higher on jealousy, suspicion, and willingness to break established rules. Infected women trended toward being warmer, more trusting, and more open to strangers. Both groups showed consistently slower reaction times than their uninfected counterparts. Infected people were more than twice as likely to be in a serious traffic accident. Flegger linked this to the same mechanism the parasite uses on rats: reduced fear, slower reflexes, a diminished ability to accurately assess danger. The same architecture the parasite uses to walk a rat toward a predator. Then, a separate research team made a discovery in the parasite's genome. Toxoplasma carries 2 genes specifically designed to produce L-DOPA in the host's brain tissue. L-DOPA is the direct chemical the body converts into dopamine. Elevated dopamine in key brain regions is a primary neurochemical signature of schizophrenia. The parasite was not just living in the brain, it was manufacturing the brain's own chemistry. These cysts form preferentially in the hippocampus and the amygdala. These are the structures responsible for fear memory and the detection of threats. A Danish study found toxoplasma-positive women were 50% more likely to attempt suicide. Other research linked the infection to increased impulsivity and self-destructive risk-taking. Flegg continued publishing paper after paper. Across 15 consecutive years of research, the scientific community broadly did not take him seriously. He was told regularly that he was looking for something that wasn't there. By 2012, a major American magazine finally brought his research to broad public attention. 30 years after he began, his central question had still not been officially answered. Here is what's worth sitting with. The World Health Organization has classified toxoplasmosis as a neglected parasitic disease since 2008. That classification means high prevalence, low awareness, and insufficient public health response. It has held that classification for 17 years. No government has funded a systematic public screening program. No public health campaign has advised non-pregnant adults to test for infection. The treatments that exist for active infection cannot reach the brain cysts. Pyrimethamine and sulfadiazine suppress new active infection. They do not dissolve what is already built into the neurons. A 2022 mouse study suggested aggressive treatment could reduce cyst load and reverse behavioral changes. That study was done in mice. There are no large-scale human trials funded to test the same intervention. Most accounts of toxoplasma stop at the science. They note the findings, raise an eyebrow, and move on. What most accounts miss is the structural question underneath. If a company had released a compound into 2 billion people's food supply without consent, correlating with schizophrenia rates, traffic fatalities, and suicide, we would call it a crime. This is not a pharmaceutical compound. It is a parasite that has been doing this quietly for 30 years of documented evidence. And the question nobody in a position of authority has answered is this: at what point does documented evidence of behavior change in 2 billion people require a response? 60 to 75 words. And here's where it gets complicated. The behavioral changes toxoplasma produces are small at the individual level. A slightly higher risk tolerance here, a slightly reduced fear response there. But toxoplasma does not infect individuals in isolation. It infects populations. In high-infection countries, researchers have found correlations with national rates of neuroticism and accident mortality. France has one of the world's highest infection rates, over 60% of its population. Brazil exceeds 70%. The United States sits at roughly 11 to 30%, depending on region. If even a fraction of Fleger's correlations hold at population scale, then schizophrenia wards, traffic fatality statistics, and impulsive violent acts, all of them carry a parasite somewhere in the equation. Nobody has done that calculation officially. There is no toxoplasma test included in standard medical checkups in any country. Pregnant women are screened in some countries because fetal infection causes severe damage. Healthy, non-pregnant adults are not screened anywhere as a matter of routine. Flegg has said, toxoplasma may be the most overlooked factor in global mental health. The parasite does not care about this conversation. It has never needed us to know it is there. What question does that leave, if knowing this changes nothing about what's already inside us? Fleger still sits in his office in Prague, still publishing, still unrefuted. The parasite still sits in 2 billion brains, still unaddressed. The question it raises is not whether we are controlled. It is whether, if we were, we would want to know. And what it means for everything we thought we chose. Somewhere inside 2 billion people right now, a cyst is waiting for a cat that will never come. Every story like this is here. One documentary,